Hey guys, QUESTRADE here with another video, and you have my cousin to thank. I'll explain. This past weekend, we were celebrating 100 days with my daughter June. We're celebrating her 100 days. It's like a common Chinese tradition, and I invited family for a big dinner, and one of my cousins said, hey, when's your next video? So the fact that I know that he checks out my channel has motivated me to create this video right now. In this video, I'm going to clear up what I think are misconceptions that people still have about dividends. I mean, if I feel like 9 people out of 10, when they message me online or come up to me and talk to me about investing, a lot of the times they're like, okay, why are you investing in XEQT? Isn't the yield a little too small? Why isn't the yield larger? Don't you want a certain amount of passive income? So there's a lot of questions and then counter arguments against index investing that I really don't think it makes sense at all. So I'm just going to break it down. But before I do that, let's do some portfolio update porn. I say this because, they get the best views on my channel. It's good for the content creator and the viewer. The content creator gets to make a thumbnail with this big number, and viewers who are curious about someone's portfolio can check and see me like an open book. So it's a win-win. Everyone loves these. So let's get right to it. Actually, do me a favor and leave a comment as to why you clicked on this video. Was it the thumbnail? Was it the number, the money sign? Is it because you always look forward to these sort of monthly updates? Please, if you're a supporter, if you want to support the channel, please just leave a comment as to why you even clicked this video. So right now we're in my Wealthsimple account, $163.6 thousand. So on track to, in this account, to be close to 170, on our way to 200. RSP, TFSA. Let's click. So someone wanted to know my average price for both, and the last price was 24.85 from Friday. I'm doing this at late Sunday night. So TFSA, I was buying that first, so that's why the average price was lower. And if you scroll down, see the RSP, the price is higher than the current price because I started buying that heavily early this year when the market was tanking. And I take actions. I back my words with actions in that I don't believe in market timing. So if that's true, then I should be buying regardless whether market goes up and down. Hindsight's 2020. So that's where the status of the Wealthsimple part of the portfolio. If we go to QUESTRADE, again, I started with QUESTRADE, which is why I have a bit of TFSA in here. And I'm not sure if I can scroll down. I'm going to move up this window a little bit on my OBS just to show the average cost. I've been buying. This is for the RSP. I did a video. My last video was on it, and I've been buying where it was like dipping a little, and that's why it's 23.90, 23.32. This is when for the TFSA part, like I said, it's like the first thing I did. I opened, so this was first bought a while ago, and that's how things are going here. So my daughter June just made $120.42. She's on her way. So if I combine all of this, I'm going to include June's net worth as part of mine for now, and this is just me, not counting the amount that my wife has. So just me alone, Wealthsimple plus QUESTRADE, I'm at 169.4 thousand. Almost basically at 170 and 30K away from 200,000. So pretty sweet stuff. We're back in my office, and I think as I'm recording this, I want this to be my go-to video when someone asks me, why is the yield of my ETF too low? Like, why don't I care about dividends? I want this to be the go-to. So in short, I mean, until I retire, the key thing is I just care about total returns, whether they come from the share appreciation or share value appreciation or dividends. It doesn't really matter. And if you read into it or research, then you will also understand why it doesn't really matter. Let's see if I can break it down into points of discussion. So number one would be, I want to be broadly diversified. So you have to recognize that the majority of companies do not pay a dividend. I think it's not a large majority. I think I read a quote that said something like 38% of some US stocks pay a dividend. So that would mean 62% don't. And so if you have, and the dividends really the ones that do pay a dividend range from low, like really low percentage of dividend to really high dividend. So overall, if you're broadly diversified, if your portfolio sort of matches the characteristics of the market, then you should naturally have a low dividend yield. And that's why the S&P 500 index has a low dividend yield. That's why XEQT, VQT, ZEQT, and all these other globally diversified ETFs don't have a high dividend. The key takeaway should also be that I'm indifferent to dividends, because if the market, if most of the companies in the market were paying a dividend or a high dividend, then the ETF that I would pick would naturally have high dividend also. So I'm trying to match the market as best as I can, trying to be broadly diversified across multiple sectors. And that's why I happen to have a low dividend yield, because the market contains companies that don't pay them, most of them. And most of the major growth companies, which form most of my, well, not most, but they're higher weighted in the ETF. They're like the bigger market cap, and those are usually growth stocks that do not pay a dividend. And now diversity can mean different things to different people. Some of my friends, some of my closest friends, have 10 to 20 stocks, and they think that they're diversified, and to each their own, right? XEQT has thousands of stocks, right? And that's in different sectors. That's what I consider diversified. And I think a lot of the times when people chase dividends, because high dividends in certain countries are usually focused like specifically in certain industries, that's where you might get a lack of diversification there. So you have to be careful there. Like, my dad loves dividends. I haven't asked him to see his portfolio. I'm just gonna let him do his thing. But my sister started investing many years ago and heard about dividends and loved them. But in Canada, those are generally, bank stocks like BMO, RBC. So I think she gravitated more towards the financial stocks. And I think that can be an issue compared to like XEQT, where you are in technology, you're in finances, you're in like different other sectors. And I see that as a plus. But everyone will have their own idea of how diversified they want to be. And some of the biggest YouTubers, like this guy, thinks 5 is enough.
We're going to talk about all this today. I hope you enjoy. And by the way, all these portfolios have 5 stocks. Why 5 stocks? Because I believe it's honestly the perfect amount of diversification. I believe if you have any more than 10 stocks, it's too much, because
I absolutely think 5 is a dangerous amount of stocks to have. But again, that's up to you. Now, I do have to mention a video that Ben Felix made 2 years ago. He is by far my favorite finance content creator. He's a professional portfolio manager, and everything that he says is based on academic papers or research. So insane stuff. Definitely check his channel. Basically, his channel is teaching people and referencing all these papers that build up the methodology and the theories that he has. And my channel is basically taking those theories, showing how an average person can take them and put them into practice, and being an open book about it. So Ben Felix, check out his material. But let's go to YouTube, and this is the video that he made. So Ben actually made this video called The Irrelevance of Dividends 2 years ago. He's more recently made The Relevance of Dividend Irrelevance, but it caused quite the stir, especially with people that already committed to dividends with having dividend in their YouTube name, like the dividend experiment. Dividends are irrelevant, or the irrelevance of bad theories, like going against academic research. Like, people are just really committing dividends are not irrelevant. So again, I'm just showing this emotional side. Like, it produced many videos. What is this dividend irrelevance theory? Like, is everything I did wrong? I remember watching a lot of these videos, and people were definitely on the defensive, because again, their YouTube channel name or their whole YouTube channel, their portfolio life was dependent on dividends. And here's this like random white dude saying that dividends are irrelevant. But I think what he meant by irrelevant is more like indifferent, in that you shouldn't let that guide how you construct your portfolio. So like I said, I talked about my sister, who at the time may have slanted her stuff too much towards financial stocks because of that dividend yield. And when you don't do that, you have a more broadly diversified portfolio. So it's just being careful not to be properly diversified from different angles, and not let dividends steer you possibly to be too focused in one sector, one industry. That's all. I think that's pretty innocent. And like I said, for me, if the market had mostly dividend stocks, then I would have a high dividend yield. That's it. I'm really indifferent to it. What the market is composed of, that's how my ETF, the one that I would ultimately pick, is probably going to look like. So, nothing to be riled up about. So I think that was just point one. And point number two is when it comes down to the discussion of needing to sell shares when you have no yield or a low dividend yield, whereas dividend investors or passive income investors will say they don't need to sell any shares. They have income that goes into their account either quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. That concern is sort of irrelevant to me because I'm going to be buying and holding XEQT until I retire. Of course, when I plan to buy a home in the next year or two, I'm probably going to have to sell a bunch of XEQT, but in general, the philosophy is just to buy XEQT. It rebalances by itself, so I don't have to think about taking profit here and then buying some other stock. It's just one stock that handles one ETF that handles everything for me. So that's why it's so sweet. So the concept of taking profit is kind of non-existent in at least my strategy world. But what happens when I am 65 or I am ready to retire? Yeah, I will have to sell shares, and I know a lot of people are allergic to that idea when they talk about that. I don't want to have to sell shares. They're more comfortable having the dividends automatically shoot them the amount that they need, whether it's quarterly, semi-annually, and annually. And that's fine if people are also able to tune that dividend yield amount to the amount that they want. Because if there's someone that spends or feels like they can spend the max of their dividends, let's say their dividend yield percentage, annual percentage is 10%, that would be equivalent to me selling 10% of my portfolio every year, right? So, and maybe they don't want to do that. Maybe ideally they want to be able to control their spending to only spend 4%. And a lot of people can do that. A lot of people can have a 10% yield portfolio, spend 4%, reinvest the 6%. So it's person to person, but there is research done that a lot of people tend to use dividends as use the whole amount as that spendable amount. And that could be not good for people who can't control themselves. For my strategy, I used to think that when I got older, I'd just shift to a dividend portfolio. Now that I've done more research, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to basically make my own dividends, right? I'm going to plan to sell, if I have $1 million year one, sell 4%. And then every other year, I judge it based on how the market is doing, how my portfolio is doing. If my portfolio tanks, I'm going to reduce my spending that year by a certain amount. And, research has shown that being able to adjust your spending percentage post-retirement leads to higher efficiency in spending post-retirement versus, again, having that dividend yield amount dictate how much you're going to spend. And I think a lot of young investors on YouTube, they focus too much on trying to maximize that monthly income when I just think it doesn't really matter, right? It's irrelevant. And that's it for another video. And if you have any questions, especially if you know me in person, please message me on Facebook. Happy to talk to you about what or how I plan to do this in the future, why I think you don't need any yield. It's really not that hard. A lot of you do a lot more complicated things. A lot of my best friends or cousins or family members have portfolios with 20, 30, 40 stocks. So selling shares is not hard or a big deal. You don't have to time a market. You can essentially mark it on your calendar when you need to be selling for when you're consuming post 65 or whatever. That's what I plan to do. I'm not going to shift my portfolio to a dividend-focused portfolio. That's not going to happen. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.